I'm Dr. Duke, and I am joined by Mitchell Shaw, a freelance contributor to the New American magazine. Mitchell, thank you so much for joining me today.
Glad to be here, Dr. Pesta.
Well, as a 25-year university professor who's seen kids from a long perspective, you college kids, we are entering into new territory as we're going to have kids born after 9/11 who are going to be voting in this presidential election. Tell me what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, so it is. It's a new epoch, Dr. Pesta, in that there were, I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but I think it was 2.7 million people born in the 12 months after 9/11, and another 2.5 million born in the 12 months following that. That means a prospective 5 million new eligible voters. Now, some of those kids have died in car wrecks or whatever in the meantime, but those numbers won't hold true. But somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 million prospective new voters that will be able to vote in 2020 that have never not known the police state and have never not known the surveillance state.
Right, and have not ever known an America that wasn't at war either.
No,
and so
they've never not known a war state.
In my experience with these college kids, the ones that are roughly voting age, what I've seen over the last 10 years is not optimistic. These kids are culturally incredibly ignorant. We're putting kids in college. We're letting kids in college who shouldn't be there. It's all part of the new inclusion movement, right? That excellence doesn't matter. Just make sure everybody gets the same low education. What they know about politics, they get exclusively from their professors and their teachers. They are uncurious. They don't watch news. They don't pay attention. They don't know how to determine real news sites from fake ones. And so with this group voting now, I mean, my thought is that we're not – and one more thing I would say. I would be willing to bet that much more than half of them don't bother voting at all, that won't even go do it. But what are your take on this generation in the voting?
Well, I try to be optimistic. In my article at thenewamerican.com, I remarked that it's easy to dismiss them as young and dumb. They are young. They're not all dumb. Many of them are brilliant. I mean, when I have my ear to sort of the tech ground. I love technology, and when I look at the development of technology that's coming out of 20-somethings and even younger. I mean, some of the technology that I use because I use a lot of open source software. Many of the contributors are 14, 15, 17 years old. These are some brilliant people. Unfortunately, intelligence doesn't always equate to accuracy in information. So one of the problems that I see us running into in the very, very near future is that if you were to poll the average post 9/11 voter right now, these kids that were born post 9/11 that will be old enough to vote in the upcoming election, if they understand the dangers of, say, the surveillance state, which is sort of my hot button, it was the thing that spawned me to really think about this in the first place. If you were to poll them about that, you would either get, if they lean toward the conservative, oh, big deal, we've got to fight the terrorist and this is what matters. So once we discount those 12 or 13 that lean toward the conservative, and I'm being a little exaggerative there, but the vast majority of them are going to lean toward the liberal because that's the world they've increasingly grown up in. Then their reaction to the welfare or the warfare state, the surveillance state, the police state is going to be to vote for Bernie Sanders or Joe Biden or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or someone of that ilk. If they think about it at all and they react to it negatively, their reaction is going to be to go full bore socialist and fight the man.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Mitch. I don't think our kids are stupid. I think that they are hideously miseducated. That's kind of where I was going.
Absolutely.
Even indoctrinated, I would say. And so the brilliant ones, like you said, are younger and younger. They're tech people, what we used to call nerdish a little bit, right? They know tech. They're 24 hours a day on screen. They started video gaming when they were 2 years old. They really know coding. They really know how to handle and create technology. But what we're talking about is educated voters, right? What can we hope for in a generation that has not been given accurate history, an accurate accounting of the founding of this country, an accurate accounting of what the costs of freedom are, an accurate accounting they have not received over the price of liberty. So many things that these kids are taking for granted because their education has taken it for granted, and they've been miseducated and misinformed about those things that American people for hundreds of years have taken as sacred. When they go into those voting boxes, first of all, I kind of it was half a joke, but I'm willing to bet that given the lack of civics and the lack of real hard teaching that encourages kids to participate in the process, I'm betting that probably less than 40% of those kids are going to vote to begin with. Of those 5 million kids, I bet you it's going to be about 35% who vote. The ones who are socially active, though, I would imagine are going to, as you just said, overwhelmingly vote Democrat because of the world they've grown up in and the educational environment we've handed them.
And probably not what you and I would consider the moderate wing, if there's such an animal still, of the Democrat Party, but the extreme left wing, the socialist Democrat wing, the Bernie Sanders wing. And this is where our work's cut out for us, because one of the things I said in my article is that fish don't know they're wet because they don't know what dry is. And the post-9/11 voter doesn't know what freedom is, because he doesn't know that he has always lived under tyranny. So our job, the job that's cut out for Duke Pesta and Mitchell Shaw and every concerned American who gets what's going on, is to help the post-9/11 voter to understand what liberty is, and that we have to tear down the surveillance state and tear down the police state and unplug the war machine, not sacrificing liberty in the process, but so that liberty can prevail. It's not just that we have to do that so that we can have liberty. It's that we have to do that because we can't have liberty in a surveillance state, in a police state, in a constant state of war.
I think we do this. I mean, given that the radical progressive left, and it's ironic to me, Mitch, that these kids are going to be, who don't think they want state police, they don't want a war machine, they're going to vote for radical progressive candidates who are going to make some of the worst nightmare decisions with regards to personal liberty and freedom. They're voting for outright socialists, right? The idea that these kids, those kids who are most likely to vote in the election, are going to be the ones who actually think that socialism is about fairness and freedom and liberty and democracy. It's not. What would be your plan? So we got to work cut out for us, you said, but what would be your plan, given that the progressive left owns the schools, they tend to own the media, they own our entertainment culture? How do we get our message through to them?
Yeah, the good news is they don't own every conversation, and they certainly don't own every online conversation. So part of it is going to be about finding out, and it's sort of the shortcut is not short, I guess is a good way of putting it. I spent about a decade on staff with the John Birch Society, and what I used to tell my volunteers in the field is a large part of your job is to get to know your neighbors, get to know your coworkers, and understand it doesn't matter if this is your hot button and what makes you tick. You've got to figure out their hot button and what makes them tick. And so when a young person, laments the warfare state or laments the loss of privacy on the internet, we need to help them understand that that doesn't just come from the right. It comes from the right, what we call the right, and what we call the left. And that the element that really needs to be maintained is liberty. Once they fall in love with the idea of liberty, they're smart. Many of them are very intelligent. They will connect the dots and realize that Bernie Sanders is not the path to liberty. The progressive, liberal, extreme left element of the Democrat Party is not the path to liberty, but to more tyranny.
Well, I like one of your solutions there is the internet is still free. Despite radical attempts on the left to regulate it, the internet still is free. And that's a place where there are all sorts of alternative voices that are beginning to turn on kids. The number of university professors I know who just despise the Jordan Petersons, they just despise the new media because it is successful with younger generations. They are reaching kids who are questioning the uber liberal orthodoxy that we've tried to push on them. We've got about 30 seconds left, Mitchell, and I'd like you to quick comment. How do you see the vote going for how many of these 5 million post-9/11 babies are going to vote, and how do you think they're going to vote?
Oh, I think you're right. I think it's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 35%. And I think how they're going to vote depends an awful lot on how you and I and a million other guys like us spend the next year.
Excellent point. Mitchell Shaw.
We can reach them.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think we have to be responsible for them, right, outside of the typical normal structures where they get their information. Mitchell Shaw, freelance reporter for the New American Magazine, thank you so much for taking the time today. And we'll check back with you as the election gets closer.
Thanks. God bless.